When you look around, the world can feel, well, pretty chaotic, right? So we're going to ask a big question today. Could an ancient spiritual framework actually hold a map for getting through our modern challenges? Let's dive into what's known as the Path of Vows.
So here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll look at the spiritual diagnosis for why things are the way they are. Then, we'll get into the serious promises you have to make to even start on this path. After that, we'll see how you put those promises into action, and it's about more than just money. Then we'll tackle the two different kinds of work we all do, before finally bringing it all together in the ultimate balancing act.
All right, so let's start with the big picture. Why is this path even necessary right now? Well, the sources we're looking at today suggest there's a really deep spiritual reason that our world feels so intense. And this leads to a fascinating question, almost a paradox, right? It seems like whenever things get really, really bad in the world, some kind of profound spiritual path or teaching shows up. But why? Why do those two things happen together? Well, according to this framework, we're not just in some random, tough spot in history. We are living in a specifically prophesied era, the final kalpa. And yeah, it's described as a time of huge challenges, for sure. But here's the kicker. It's also a time of absolutely unparalleled spiritual opportunity. So how does this actually work? It's laid out as this really clear cause and effect chain. First, you get a widespread decline in human morality. People stop acting with integrity. This creates a kind of negative energy that builds up and up. Second, that energy has to go somewhere, and it bursts out into the physical world as disasters. Natural ones, man-made ones, you name it. But then, step 3, as a kind of antidote, a divine truth or path, the Dharma, is sent down to give people with good hearts a way out. Okay, so if this path is the antidote, what's the price of admission? What does it actually ask of us? Because it's definitely not a casual thing. It all starts with a very serious, very personal set of commitments. Yeah, this isn't something you just casually dip your toes into. The entry point isn't just being curious. It's a formal promise, a set of vows that basically builds the entire foundation for everything that comes after. It's the absolute, non-negotiable first step. And here they are. These 10 vows are really less about strict, rigid rules and more about developing a specific kind of mindset. It's about being sincere, being humble, and calling out your own hypocrisy. It's a promise to keep pushing forward, to honor the teachings and your guides, to stay disciplined, and this is interesting, to know when to keep secrets, but also know when to share the path with others who are looking for it. And all of it you do according to your own ability. And they don't mess around with how important these promises are. This quote from the source material makes it pretty clear. These vows are the key. Fulfilling them is, well, everything. All right, so you've made the inner commitment. Now what? How do you actually show it in the real world? Well, the very next step is all about the practice of selfless giving. It comes down to a concept called dana, and this is key. It's not just about writing a check or donating stuff. The real secret sauce is the intention. True dana means you're giving without expecting anything back at all. It's a gift that comes straight from a place of genuine compassion. This framework actually breaks giving down into 3 different types, which is pretty cool. First, there's the one we all think of, giving wealth, like money or things. Then there's the giving of wisdom, teaching someone, sharing a truth that helps them. And finally, there's the giving of fearlessness. This could be your physical labor, protecting someone, or even saving a life. And each one creates a different kind of positive spiritual return. I love this way of thinking about it. It's like a spiritual currency exchange. You're taking something that's temporary and worldly, your money, your time, your knowledge, and you're converting it into eternal spiritual merit. And that's the one currency you can actually take with you when you go. Okay, now we get to the part that I think hits home for a lot of us. This is where it gets super practical. How in the world do you live a spiritual life when you've still got bills to pay and a job to get to every morning? It really boils down to this, right? How on earth do you manage that tension between your 9 to 5 and that deeper sense of purpose you might feel? It's a huge challenge, but this framework gives us a really clear way to think about it. So the teaching makes this really clear split between 2 types of work. First, there's worldly work. This is the stuff that serves the body. It's our job, what we do for survival, for money, for status. It's temporary and it's finite. But then there's sacred work. This is the work that serves the spirit. It's done for that eternal merit we talked about, for inner peace, and its benefits are considered infinite. There's this great parable that makes this crystal clear. A rich man has 4 wives.
When he's dying, he asks them to come with him. His favorite wife, who represents his body, says no way. The second wife, his money and possessions, says nope, can't come. The third, his friends and family, can only walk him to his grave. It's only the fourth wife, the one he always neglected, who represents his spirit and all the good deeds he's done, who says, yes, I will go with you.
And this is where it all comes together, because it's not about choosing one type of work over the other. It's about finding a beautiful harmony between them. And this is so important. Nobody's telling you to quit your job and go live in a cave. The goal is way more elegant than that. It's about taking your everyday, worldly life and infusing it with a sacred purpose. There's a quote that just nails this idea perfectly. The goal is to thrive in both areas. Don't fall behind on your spiritual work, but also don't fail at your worldly responsibilities. It's a both-and kind of path, not an either-or. So how do you do it? Well, the strategy is basically a 3-step process. First, you use your regular job to create stability in your life. Then, you use that stability, the time and resources it provides, to make space for your sacred work. And finally, the purpose you find in that sacred work starts to flow back and elevate everything you do in your worldly life. It creates this amazing upward spiral.
So in the end, the big takeaway here is that real, lasting fulfillment isn't found by just being a huge success at your job or by only focusing on spiritual things. It's found in the balance, in a life where what you do serves both the needs of the world and the call of your own spirit.
And so, I'll leave you with this to think about. In your own life, in your daily routine, what is one thing you already do that you could start to infuse with just a little more sacred purpose, something to chew on? Thanks for tuning into this explainer.